to a degree when the language cannot be understood at all, we have done something. So therefore, schools won't remain schools anymore if we change the grammar beyond a particular point. Okay, now that's one way of thinking about language as a metaphor and as a way of thinking. Fine. Right. So my point then, and my answer, okay, right. I noticed that there was an echo.
I'm actually okay. I can hear you clearly. You're done.
Yes,
You're doing
Dr.
a
Zhao,
beautiful
can
job.
you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So, Dr. Zhao, let us begin with an issue. Why is it so difficult for schools to change their norms, customs, systems, expectations, and behaviors? What, in your opinion, is the, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity and to chat with you. And I think, you know, many of us in education systems, we've been in this for a while. If we understand a school, a classroom, we're not dealing with one school or one classroom. Any teacher, if you are in the classroom, you are dealing with hundreds, probably thousands of other people. You know, when we look at as one teacher in the classroom, you're actually dealing with the syllabus, the curriculum, the assessment, the textbooks, the environment, your principals. You know, any individual teacher teaching in one classroom, you're teaching with so many other people, you know. So therefore, whatever you change, you're changing a very little thing, very tiny. And there's so many other systems push you back. Any system can push your government, the publishers, the textbook people. So anything you change is very tiny, very small, you know. And then we have people who try to change entire school systems. It's almost impossible because parents and the public have accepted that schools should be like this. You know, Abbas, this is actually quite interesting. When you look at how modern schools developed, you know, we always try to trace back, I'm sure in Muslim culture, in any kind of religious culture, there was
it's
a
universal all
model.
over.
Yeah, there's always something in there in the history. But people always have this view, children cannot do much. If you look at our school system, when we developed it, we always believe children are incompetent. They come to learn from us. So when we designed the school, we never thought about from the children's perspective. We always taught them as ignorant, that don't know enough. And so we are there to teach them. We didn't think they want to manage themselves, so we're there to manage. You know, the most books published in education is about how do you manage your classroom. That's just, so when you try to change anything, you're changing a lot of things. And no individual, honestly, has been very successful. You have other different kind of schools, like democratic schools, you know, you have optional schools, but they're on the peripheral. And if you go to democratic school, it's not a school, you know, but we still call it a democratic school, you know. So that's, I think that's how anything we try to change becomes so big, and it's very hard for individuals to make big changes. But doesn't mean we cannot make changes. We can chat about that later. You know, we can make small changes, but not massive changes. COVID gives us the opportunity to rethink what education is. Technology should have done that, but it hasn't.
Thank you. You have captured some of the layers of complexity with which in which our schools are, let's say, embedded Um, right. I see a person whose video is on. Excuse me, please. Yes.
Zara, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, Zara, please. Video should be off, and yes, you should be on mute. Thank you. All right. So we see an intransigence in our schools now. The good news about the crisis, a fine sentence in your speeches, Dr. Zhao, has been, and even in your article, that a crisis is too good an opportunity to waste. And a global crisis like this COVID crisis is just excellent because it takes away from us all of our excuses. It takes away all these reasons that we had, and we said, oh, but how can I change such and such a thing, because I have to deal with the principal who believes this, and the board of studies who does this, and the curriculum department who does this, and as you said, I mean, and the government who does this, and the publishers. And along comes COVID, which wipes clean the entire landscape of learning, if you like, and gives us a marvelous opportunity which says, all right, let us rethink and read this thing. So what I like about your metaphor of the grammar of schooling is, let us not worry about changing the grammar of schooling, but speak a different language where we change the grammar of schooling to a grammar of education. Now, that I believe is a remarkable shift in our thinking. And I would like to share a very fine sentence I heard on an online seminar in a keynote address by a professor in Belgium, Professor Philip, who raised a question, and I would like to offer it to all my people who are listening, and indeed to you as well. It's wonderful. She asked, is COVID the problem? And is online teaching the solution? Distance teaching the solution? Or is COVID the solution? Now, you can immediately see that if we see COVID not as a problem, but as a solution, we have a very different way of being able to create the space for changing the grammar of schooling to a grammar of education. So I would now like to now turn to you and request, if I now have online classes and if I have Zoom classes, what are the kinds of things that when schools reopen and when we go back to the brick and mortar, even in changed form, but we will apart, what are the kinds of things we should deliberately say to ourselves, we now have an opportunity to not do such and such, and make sure that we do such and such. So, over to you.
Thank you. Well, I think there are several things we need to think about. I would like to first of all think about today. Education has to definitely have a social responsibility. Every society, every government, every religion has its own views of what children should become when they are a member of a society. But that is a very small piece. That's a very small piece of life. So when we teach about person about, let's say, do you believe how the government works? Do you believe, when you become a member of a society, the social responsibilities, the civics, that's one very small piece. But our school have designed a whole curriculum around that. So I think the first thing we need to get to is to say, do we need to, as a government, nationalize a curriculum for all children of all their time? That's what schools was about. Schools was about one national curriculum for all children. But maybe we should say, okay, our national curriculum would be maybe, let's say, 10% of your schooling, 20%, maybe 30%. But the 70% of the time should be given to children to learn what will make them a productive member of a society, to get a job, to become a good parent. That's the private piece. So I think the private piece, every individual should pursue their own curriculum. So can we, as a school, when we build a school, build education, help from that angle, ask our students, what would they like to learn, what they would like to do. But in education, we're always constraining our thinking based on the society we have. They're one of the reasons, Abbas, I did not invite other people to join this conversation because I want this to be about Pakistan. Because if you think about Pakistan, you're trying to teach your children, say, okay, what jobs there are. But those jobs are very constraining. Any one of your child can become a global star. There's no reason for that person not to be. You can be. And the technology is there. And if not, children can find ways to do that. Any child can have the great potential of anyone else. But why don't we think from that? If we start from that angle, we'll start asking the students, what would you like to do? How are you learning that? Then we retreat as a teacher, not to teach, but to support, not even to facilitate, but to create possibilities. Our children can. I'm sure, Abbas, you've seen this. If children can take a course from Harvard, from Yale, from anywhere, they can do those things. The second point I want to say is that learning. COVID has forced our children to be home, different places. Learning in our traditional grammar of schooling has to be taught. When a child comes to school, if you didn't teach them, there's no learning. So that's why you are forcing teachers to teach 30, 40, 50, 60 children in one class for 45 to 50 minutes. And then that's considered learning. But that's not true. Maybe something common. But you don't have to teach. I'm really encouraging teachers not to teach, but encourage learning. Children can learn, and they are learning machines. Children are born learning machines. They are very young. I'm sure if you are a parent, when your child is born, that child wants to gain autonomy. That child wants to learn. That child is learning all the time how to deal with you. So we need to think about learning should be owned by the child. The child decides what to learn, you support them, then negotiate with them. The child may have different dreams about the future, you support them. Do not teach. I'm really encouraging people, try not to teach a class like what we are doing now. Don't teach using Zoom to teach like this. Children have different pursuit. You may have the need for learning communities, but learning community is not as big as 40 or 50 or 60 people. They do smaller groups. Children may be able to stay home in their neighborhood, in their village, and then they come to learn. So they're learning reorganizedness in a very different way. And finally, if you think about, again, designing learning from a student perspective. And maybe the student will, if we do not teach them, if we don't teach them 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day, they own the learning, they will organize on their own way. Schooling does not have to limit students' learning. I'm sure right now in Pakistan, in different areas, you will find child or children who are learning on their own, who are treating schools as something they have to go, then they're learning on their own, they're doing their own things. So I'm thinking this massive changes could happen, and education, not schooling, is about helping each individual person to learn, not about imposing everything on everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you. You have touched all the all the dangerous spots in Pakistan, because over here the discussion is precisely along these lines, and we resonate very well with the international kind of issues that are there, and our tensions are the same. Though there is an urban-rural divide in our country, and some of these issues are more for the urban part where connectivity is easier, computers are available, laptops are available, and though it is getting much better all elsewhere, some of our indigenous modes of learning are very much vibrant and available in our rural areas. But that's a very different topic by itself. Let me kind of, mashallah, wonderful. What you've just touched upon this excellent point about Carl Rogers, I believe, has put it well. If only we taught less, children might learn some. It was a nice play on the whole language. We teachers are so busy teaching, and in that we need to manage the class, and we look at misbehavior, and we need to look at all that. Whereas when children own their own learning, there will be no classroom management of misbehavior issues. They will be organized in order to achieve the aim, which will be nobler, higher, and better than maybe what we have put before them, such as grades and marks and some of the other uh, grammar of schooling that we are stuck with, the adverbs and the prepositions that we are stuck with. A very good point you made is about what kind of future. Now, here is something I would like to take, and something I want to all my friends also reflect. The children in my class today are going to live in 2030 or 2040 or 2050. Inshallah, they are only they are very young, 10 years old. Now, the best service we can do them is to ask ourselves, will this connectivity, will this screen time, will this distraction, will it become less or will it become more? And if it is going to become more, should we not teach them how to navigate in a meaningful way this tsunami of materials, screen time, and other stuff, rather than forbid them in schools and say, no, we will not have any mobile phones in our schools because you abuse them. Of course, children are children. Of course, there will be that edge where you need to look into it. But I believe that all parents and all teachers need to ask, are we preparing children for their future or our past? And in that sense, then we need to answer honestly, we are preparing them for their future. And therefore, we need to give them more tools and more autonomy and 70% of freedom and ability to find their own path and navigate those paths while we create a space for such things to happen. Thanks. We are on track there, and we speak the same language. Professor Zhang, what I would like, Professor Zhao, what I would like to get from ask you, in one of your, you can see that I've been really tracking you and listening to you in the silver lining talks as well. You said a very fine thing in one of your other programs. Schools are constructed by human beings. If they don't serve the purpose anymore, then other human beings can redesign and reconstruct schools. It is a human invention. I love that. That's an excellent way of basically understanding. There is nothing divine about the way the rooms and the structures and the norms and the systems are. They are amenable to change, and COVID has given us that chance. So I would like you to reflect on this point about the human element of making, and therefore the other human element of remaking.
Thank you, Abbas. You've said something really fabulous there. It's especially when you talk about mobile phones. Should they be in the school or not? Let me really actually say a few things about that. Then I'll answer a question.
Please,
preparing for their future or preparing for our past.
Yes.
I think you're absolutely right. I think right now, I have a very hard time for schools, for parents to spend any time controlling their children's media consumption. I think it should be done by children themselves. And they need to learn how to manage their life. And that's, even like, My children, I have two children now. They are older now, so they're all out of college.
I also have
For
three
example,
children.
when you were young, I invite everybody to think this. Your children go to school early morning. Do you go wake them up, or should they wake them up by themselves?
Wow.
I would say they should wake up by themselves. If
Yeah.
they don't go to school. They should come to beg you, ask you to help them go to school. Now that, I'm sure in the beginning, the children actually are able to get up and they will find ways to wake themselves up. If they miss a few days of school. When you're 6-year-old, you miss 3 days of school, no big deal. But you learn to manage your own life. The
Right.
same thing with the media. Schools have, traditionally you have responsibilities. You watch TV, you watch video, you do YouTube, you do whatever you like. But then you have work to do. Every child has work to do. If you only do not try to stop them from watching, only hold them responsible for what you want them to do. So they will have to manage that. Why do you say, okay, 5 minutes today, 10 minutes tomorrow? You are constant counting them. You need to give them a bigger space for them to manage and give them time. Don't worry about the short-term things. They need to learn to manage on their own. Okay, so that's really something I think it's very important when you talk about self-determined learners. Students need to become owners of their own learning. They need to manage. They need to be owners. Do not think, oh, they're young, they cannot do this. If you did that, until they become older, they will never learn. Because there will be, and it gets worse and worse. So that's something I just want to invite you to think as a parent. And then the same happens in education.
All cultures.
When you were thinking about how do we change? What kind of education do we want to deliver? In America, we're seeing COVID has already got parents to organize their own learning. They call it pods. Pandemic pods. Parents are offering courses for each other. There's a lot of young people starting new companies now to offer students online learning in very different ways. And there are many, many things popping up. I don't know if that's happening in Pakistan or not. That's going to destroy the system. That's very nice, but I'm not sure how long this can last, but there are a lot of parents finding new possibilities of learning, of education. So, from what you were thinking about, I'm thinking about the future of education. Children need to be the owner of their own learning. They need the experience to practice. You as adults, or we as adults, we can negotiate, we can collaborate, we cannot pretend they don't know anything. Children know a lot of things. They are learning, they are interacting. So I'm hoping in schools, for example, speak of grammar of schooling. Now we have age groups. By this age, they should be in this class. Why? There's no real reason for that. Why do you do that? You can just dissolve that. And like you were saying, grades. Why do you care about grades? Grades we used to select people. I think in the future, I don't know, this is very sad. I think a lot of developing countries, I'm from China originally. You think about China, think of Pakistan, a lot of these developing countries, by the way, China is still a developing country in many ways. So you see, a lot of times we're following the developed countries. We want to impose things on our children. So we give them grades, we give them tests, so we can select people to become elite. But really today in the developed countries, I don't know, how many YouTube stars have you seen? If you've seen Greta Thunberg, from Sweden, has changed massively globally. Every child has that potential. Are we able to give them that opportunity? I think really is key. Now I'm really talking about the future of education should be driven by students. Again, that's my strong message.
Excellent. Excellent. Yes, we agree. And in my workshops and in my places, I give this word around that ultimately it is our own children sitting in our classrooms today who will take the decisions the way Pakistan is going to be. We guys will not be there anymore. It is the children in the classrooms today and the experiences that we give them. Absolutely. Right. Dr. Zhao, as I promised that in our conversations prior, that I'm going to pick your brains on two major themes from your own writings. And we are looking at the grammar of schooling, not that we have concluded anything or exhausted it, not at all. This is an ongoing conversation. But I would like to now take this moment to shift our conversation to a second major, shall we say, learning that I've had thanks to you. And now thanks to you, to all my people who are listening. It is that education, people who learn, people who are in the business of teaching and learning are always using hospitals and medical world and others as an example to say, look, this is the way the healing profession works. And from there, there is a very important lesson that people in education need to learn. And we all need to learn. And it is this excellent point about side effects of the teaching strategies. Ladies and gentlemen, those who are listening, just to give you a capsule of the idea, and I will then ask Professor Zhao to tell us. All medication, all medicines, every time you buy a packet, there is a piece of paper very carefully folded in it with very, very small print in it, which tells you that this medication is useful to patient so-and-so, so-and-so. But please, people who have diabetes, please take care, don't touch it. Or children who are age so-and-so, or whose weight is such and such, etc., etc. Well, that is exactly the honorable ethical way of describing a cure, a medicine that actually heals. No medicine is a panacea for everything. So a medication can help some people, but it is the mark of a good doctor and a good medical pharmaceutical company to point out that, look, it may not be as useful to some of these other kinds of patients. Please look into them. Now, I was very much excited by this idea that education research seems to be totally awash with things that work. Now, I love this idea. Of course it works. Professor John Hattie in Melbourne. Sir, I noticed your name had a connection with Melbourne as well. Are you in connection with Dr. John Hattie, his work?
Yes, we
Dr. Zhao?
are.
Okay,
I'm also a professor at the University of Melbourne with the graduate school. So
wonderful. Okay.
John and I, we are actually running seminars right now together. Yes,
You
so
are
I
running
know
seminars?
John very well.
Good.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking to a day when we can get Dr. Hattie in the in this conversation, and let's see if something is possible. And I'm
I'm sure
looking
you
at that.
can. Yes.
Wow, thank you, sir. Thank you. So Dr. Hattie has made this point. Everything works. No matter what you do in the classroom. He, of course, sarcastically also adds, if anything has a pulse, it works. Any idea you can bring a classroom and it will work. Hello. Hello. Somebody's video is on. Please put it off. Hello.
Good.
Yes. Excuse me. Yes. Take it. Let me continue. So, Dr. Zhao has come upon a very powerful idea, and I love it, the way in which he is able to title his articles. So he has written a piece called "What Works May Hurt." What works may hurt.
Parcel.
Huh.
Parcel.
Somebody please put the video off. Excuse me, please put the video off.
Excellent. We're good.
Yes, are we okay?
Yes.
All right, fine. So what works may hurt. And that is precisely the point about how educational strategies and suggestions and ideas and other things should all be accompanied by a caveat, by something which says, look, such and such a thing will be achieved, but be careful, such and such learners will be disserved. Now, in Pakistan, one sad thing has been that our educational system has been has not delivered the kind of meaning and the kind of depth. A student of mine put it well, sir, our curriculum is like the food of Oliver Twist. the more the more he had, the more hungry he was. The curriculum was so thin and it was so mixed with gruel that it did not satisfy with the nutrition that he needed. And I thought that was a very good idea. So Dr. Zhao, your response then. What are the kinds of things in educational strategies that you would love that they came marked with contraindications?
Thank you. That's a very good summary. And it's well of the idea. Basically, in education, we've been trying to do called evidence-based. We want to collect evidence. If you, even with Zhang Hattie's work, visible learning, I've been also challenging Zhang. I said, okay, yeah, so yes, the evidence supports test scores. You've done very well, but does it support students' actual interest? So many of you may be aware of the international test, PISA. I'm sure Pakistan is part of that, PISA. And so you will see that in countries where students have high test scores, they have low interest in the subject. So do you want children to actually have high test scores, but they don't like the subject? So in your own teaching, you probably have the same idea when you're teaching a subject. In your own teaching, you drive very hard, and I'm sure Pakistani students are very hardworking, but in the end, they don't like the subject. They've done math, they've done physics, but they have no interest. So what does that mean? Well, yeah, another one is that in the short term, you've studied it, let's say math. You think you've learned very well. You've done this testing, but you cannot transfer that. You really have no math skills, but you have the math ability to pass the test. So which one is more important? Or in reading, many of you do reading, for example.
That's a deep one.
Year one, in year one student, you focus on learning to read, but then you have no content of reading. So then in year three, your students cannot comprehend, but know the techniques. So those are the things I think you want to generally see what's important for you. You want to say what's important. If you want test scores, I mean, some governments want that, and there are ways to improve test scores, but you may not expect children to want to stay engaged. They may not be as creative. They may not be as curious. And do you want that? And those things are not necessarily easily tested. So I think that's the main point of what I was really trying to focus on. Every parent, every government, every teacher, principal should know when you are gaining something, you might be losing something. Also, what's important is that the side effects also works for some students, but not other students. Like these methods may work very well for this group of students, but hurt other students. So in educational research, we always look at effect size. But effect size, unless it's a perfect correlation, you will have some students who have been hurt by your methods. So you think about your classroom, you can take care of maybe 1/3 of the students, but 2/3 are lost. So that's really the main idea.
Excellent. Excellent. I now see that you have enriched the whole metaphor. Sir, what I would like to zoom in on, in your research, you have actually seen some strategies. And because I'm a literature person and a reading person, though I don't mind the maths and the physics as well, would you be able to share with us a particular strategy, any particular reading or maths or physics, anything you like? I don't want to to fix you on that, about which you said, here is a strategy that works, provided these conditions are there, but some children it will lose due to. So while you've given us this, I would like some examples of a strategy that should have come with this contraindication.
Well, let's take direct instruction as the example.
Okay.
You know, direct
Wonderful.
instruction has been going on for over half a century.
Yeah.
And direct instruction versus inquiry-based or project-based learning. So you have two methods, right? Direct instruction is what's been traditionally done. It's just that you stand there, you deliver,
And you deliver.
students follow you, you do this. And there's a lot of research supporting direct instruction, thousands of research studies to say direct instruction works better than children discovering, discover learning, which is very true. So let me get to a specific example. We have, there's a study out of University of California, Berkeley. So they have children, 4-year-old children. They show them a toy. So you can have a direct instruction condition to say, children, look at me. This is how you play with this toy. You have another condition to say, I found this toy, but I don't know how to play it. And let me see how we can play together.
Yeah.
So when you ask children, after you show them, you demonstrate, you go play. Find how many ways you can play with this, different ways, say how long you can produce, how curious you are. You can say the first condition, direct instruction, children don't play very long. They don't discover a lot of new ways of doing, but they can play with a toy as you instructed them very well, very fast. And then the second condition, the children are a lot more curious. They play with this much longer. They're more creative. So you see that. And then in the higher grades, in high school, you do direct instruction. Then students can master the content very well, faster. But after a month, after 2 months, do they transfer? Do they retain? They don't. So they have no deeper understanding. So again, it's gained. So that's what actually it's called productive failures and unproductive success. So it's success, but it's unproductive. It's in a long run. But in education, in schools, many of you teach for short term. If you only assess students after 1 week, after 2 weeks, you'll see direct instruction is very powerful, is very useful. But after a year, after 5 years, after 10 years, is it meaningful? So you need to think like that, to think hard on those issues. Does that help?
Yes. You have now given some more material for us to chew on and to think about. That's precisely one of the lines Dr. John Hattie has taken. That very often, if children don't have a database of facts and materials to do think, I mean, there is thinking and there is thinking about. If I don't have the raw material of thinking, I won't be able to draw the connecting of the dots. I won't be able to draw the conclusions that I need. So very often teachers who are totally gung-ho on project-based and on inquiry learning, they forget that you can't just do inquiry on a blank slate of ignorance. You can do inquiry with some facts in place and then work out the conclusions from there. And that is something where the expertise of the teacher comes in. How do you create in the children an interest to do the research, go to the internet, get the websites, get the facts, put them together, and from there draw the conclusions and the thinking that they need to do. So that's why, while we think that project-based learning, inquiry-based learning has a deeper root in it, again, there is an age factor and subject another thing. I read this University of Berkeley study about the toys part, and indeed it is. But then again, uh, that is the age group where it most fits. With the higher children, as you rightly said, we need another nuanced approach for this. Would you, sir, be able to elaborate something about the reading thing? Because one of the things, there are many strategies of reading, teaching reading. And as you rightly said, what is the use? What is the use of passing the reading test and not have a lifelong love affair with books? So if
Well,
you are able to do that, then so some response to that.
well, this happens a lot. If you look at
Yeah.
East Asian countries, we have very high test scores on the PISA reading scores, but children's interest, the people's interest in reading is very low. They don't read a lot. America has not done a lot of, hasn't done well in reading. But if you fly in America, I'm sure you've done that. You see a lot of people reading. That's a very good example, right? So that's every American, if you fly, people take a
Yeah.
book or on Kindle, they're reading. But in
Yeah, we-
China, no, they don't read. They go to airport, at train station, they're playing cards. You know, it's a so that's a you know, don't you think that's a good example of the, you know, that's just very simple thing. You know, just,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So that's what you were asking about. Another question I want to give example to say about what works. You know, every country has got the idea teachers needs to be very good graduates from high school. So they work on and so every government is trying to recruit the best high school graduates to become the best teachers. So that means if teachers do well on those testing, they'll become better teachers. That's from PISA, but that's not true. So
That's right.
there was a study in Sweden, a 20-year study that followed all these teachers. They discovered some teachers with high test scores that work very well for high achieving students, but they are a disaster for low achieving students.
Hello, Edmund. Right.
And then you have teachers who don't do well in taking tests, but they may be a football coach, a soccer coach, but they're very good at talking to people. So they serve another group of students very well. So in a school, you should have teachers of different abilities rather than having the same capacity. So that's the kind of things we need to think about in education. You know, instead of one type of people to serve one type of, you know, students, we should change that thinking.
Wonderful. Right. Okay. Once again, what I'm very glad to hear is the open door to diversity. We need to have our classrooms where children are different age groups, different intelligences, different things. We need to have staff rooms where teachers are of different intelligences, different interests, different levels. We need to have school principals who understand the need for such diversity rather than go for this numerical PISA level excellence, which is not the best service for the children. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Right, Dr. Zhao, one of my sentences and observations has been over the COVID crisis that it has shown the hollowness of much of our curriculum and much of our classroom practice. Many of our classroom practices are pure myths. They are based on some mythical, our own childhood understanding that a good classroom is where there is only one voice, the teacher. Okay, or a smart student being asked to read aloud. You know, the traditional, or there is only one thing to do, which is to write on the board by the teacher or by some smart student. So right now, with these whole paraphernalia of outputs available, of platforms available, we now no longer have this necessity. We can now have smart boards where we can have uh, tweets where a child can tweet to the teacher of their responses and get them on the board. There are now all these possibilities. One major lesson, if you like, or one major thinking that along with all this technology is Professor Andy Hargreaves, someone whom I have enormous admiration for and respect for, one of my mentors. Professor Andy Hargreaves did an op-ed piece for Washington Post last week, where he raises a nice question, which I believe in Pakistan, we need to hear more, and even worldwide we need to hear, which is this. Technology is a support, but it is still in support of human beings getting on with the business of learning and teaching. It is not a master. Technology should not drive the change. Humanity should drive the change and use technology as a help to be able to do it better and with more ethical, more diversity, etc. So I would now like to take this thought that somehow in our awe, AWE, we are so awed by new technologies that somehow, a scholar has put it, we have surrendered culture to technology. We have surrendered our own human relationships, conversation. A wonderful book by Sherry Turkle about the art of the place of conversation, digital, how digitization has taken it up. So with this caveat on technology itself, I would like to hear your take on how humanity and human concern should drive the post-COVID change in education rather than technology in and of itself.
Thank you. I didn't know Andy wrote that, but anyway, so it's I wrote a book several years ago. It's called Never Send a Human to Do a Machine's Job. Never send a human to do a machine's job. That's right from the movie, The Matrix. The idea is that human beings should avoid competing with machines. You know, technology was created for a purpose, to solve some problems. And in our field, in teaching and learning, education, there are a lot of things that machines can do that human beings cannot do. We should let them do those things. For example, what we're doing today, we cannot connect. So you have to use technology. And for scientific exploration of space, deep ocean, we cannot do that. We need technology. So we need, and then there's also things that human beings do it, but we don't like doing it, and it's a waste of time. We should let machines do that. Even like when in your class, you're giving tests to students. Most of the tests can be done by machines, can be scored by machines. You should let them do it. You know, you don't have to grade the homework for them. You want students to communicate, to teach, to tutor each other. That can be done by machines. Let them do that. So my view is that technology should be taking away a lot of things we don't want to do, we cannot do, and then what we human beings do to become more human. So I think Tim Cook, the Apple CEO, once said that he's not worried about machines becoming more human. He's more worried about human beings becoming more mechanical, you know, more. And in our teaching, in our education, we run into the danger of turning us into machines. I think that this is the big danger when you talk about our children graduating in 2030, 2035. And in fact, any meaning we have today from our conversation, it may impact kids in 2040.
Yes.
That's our biggest challenge for all human beings on Earth. 7 billion of us. How do we deal with machines? My view, again, is that don't become one. The best way to do is to not become a machine. So how not to become a machine? Goes back to all my original thinking. What makes us human beings human? First of all, we are unique. We are very different.
Yes.
So machines have to be, if you want to create a machine has to be many, many copies. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. It's too expensive, most of them. So we have to be unique. Machines can be very similar, okay? Second thing, the social emotional. What we have here today, machines don't do that. We are. Third of all, machines are problem solvers. They solve problems. Human beings are problem identifiers. We identify problem. We can make machines do that. So there are many other things I can go on, but we're running out of time. So that's why. But that's what I would like to give to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, Dr. Zhao. It has been. We are down to the last 5 minutes, and it has been a most wonderful exchange, and we are extremely grateful for your generosity and your early morning pre-breakfast. Is it pre-breakfast or post? Are you going to have breakfast now?
We're going to have some breakfast after this. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Yong Zhao has been with us from Oregon, although the board behind it is University of Kansas, but then that's where he is professor. But sir, have you traveled to Oregon for like personally? Is this a campus there?
No, I live in Oregon. Because I have jobs in Kansas and also jobs in Melbourne, but I like Oregon as a place. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Sir, we would very much like to have you with us in this country at some point. The days when this all is over, and you will have, I assure you, in Pakistan, amongst educationists, a very fine fan club, thanks to this conversation, thanks to it being on YouTube, and we will certainly re-see it and learn and get the connections and things. We are very, very grateful, sir, for the insight and the wisdom that you have been with us. And we look forward to for better days and better times. And we hope that we are all able to serve our children well. A very fine thought said by someone. And I will then request a nugget of wisdom from you. Somebody said, maybe all that COVID has done is to teach us that the most precious thing that we can pay attention to is our children. So let us pay attention. I love that.
Well, thank you, Abbas. You've been a great leader with great thoughts. I appreciate working with you. This is beautiful. So I want to thank all of you for spending the time in the evening with me. There are several thoughts, I want to say that. Number one, 100 years ago, really, 1918, 1919 was the big Spanish flu. And that's also World War I. Now we have this pandemic. We are in World War III, in a sense. Countries are fighting with each other. Countries are not liking each other. There's a lot of revolution on the ground. Many, many things happening. So this is very tough. COVID is going to deliver something that's going to last for a long time. How do we rebuild ourselves? And that building really has a lot to do with children. We can say nice things about that, but really we have to take action as educators. What we can do individually to create some space for some children. I'm hoping in 5 years, in 10 years, the world will be more peaceful. We are actually going to go back to globalization. I look at the big political fights in India, Pakistan, India, China. Oh, look at what's happening now globally. We're not in a peaceful place. And we cannot do much about that, but our children can. So I'm really hoping education can help our children to become more peaceful, more prosperous. And that has to start with every one of us today. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Zhao. There will be an opportunity for us to connect on email for people who wish to ask questions or at least share some of your writings or things with us. But with your time and with your comments, we are very, very grateful for your generosity.
Yeah, so let me typing down my web address in case people wants to learn more about what I do. And
sure, please.
Or also my YouTube, that's my web address, and my YouTube, yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We conclude today and wish you well. I look forward to a good day ahead of you.
With best wishes to all of you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Assalamualaikum, sir. Thank you so much.
अब हम लोग आपस में दो तीन हेलो कर सकते हैं if you like, but
yes, sir, for
thank you
sure.
very much. All the best. Yeah. Let's see who's still there.
Assalamualaikum, sir. Assalamualaikum.
हाँ भाई, अब सलाम का लोग बहुत सारे अजनबी लोग हैं.
सर अजनबी हैं सर.
ओए हुए लोग, आसिया इमरान हैं. हेलो आसिया.
जी सर, अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह. आप कैसे हैं सर? It's really being wonderful with both of you. जो हमारे सर हैं जिनका नाम I'm feeling difficulty in pronouncing the name.
Young Zhao.
भाई बहुत है, ये है यंग झाओ.
यंग झाओ, ओके. सर आप कैसे हैं? खैरियत है सर?
आज हमारे साथ.
अच्छा, तुमने कौन सा सवाल पूछना था, पूछ ही लो.
सर आज हमारे साथ तस्नीम भी हैं, तस्नीम नजमुद्दीन.
Yes, I noticed. जी बिल्कुल. Welcome Tasneem. How are you? Are you still there? I think she's.
Assalamualaikum, sir. क्या हाल है? Thank you so very much, sir. Yes, absolutely. Very interesting session there, sir. As always.
I really love the last line that he said. Machines are problem solvers, but humans are problem identifiers. That was too powerful. Literally.
I think that's great. देखिए जी,
Exactly. I mean, हाँ.
अगर ये दुनिया का रास्ता खुला और हमारे कुछ हालात कुछ और हमें सूझा कुछ, so I will be able to parade, kind of regale you with some of the finest thinkers on education alive today. Or I might be able to get Dr. Andy Hargreaves, one of my mentors.
Oh my God. Inshallah.
Who wrote in collaboration with Michael Pullen.
और आगे हुआ इंशाल्लाह जॉन हैटी से भी बात करेंगे, उनको भी लाएंगे
इंशाल्लाह ताला.
इंशाल्लाह. Wonderful. Right जी.
Hello, अस्सलाम वालेकुम.
हाँ, वालेकुम सलाम.
Sir Abbas, this is Afsha Ayub. I have just joined your session just 10 to 15 minutes after the end of the meeting with the one person from, I think from China or Ohio, where he was from. So I missed the introduction, but the last lines aap logon ki thi, that was really very informative, where you have shared the Washington Post quote, and where that other person has also shared his point of view of what machines, how machines are different from human beings, and how I think that human beings have the importance in this world. And what I think is that all the machines and all the digital tools that we have today in this world are a tool for an accessibility of our vision. It should not, we should not be dependent on those machines to serve us.
But the thing
भाई
is that
हमारा
these
हाल तो ये
machines
है,
depend on us.
हमारा हाल तो ये है कि वालिद साहब ने पहली बार जिंदगी में बच्चे के लिए मिकानो ले आए. मिकानो, रिमेम्बर वंस अपॉन अ टाइम वो स्क्रू ड्राइवर्स और छोटे छोटे बटन्स और वो तमाम सब चीजें होती थी.
Yes, I do
जी सर,
remember that,
टॉयज
Sir
में
Abbas.
Yes, sir.
तो भाई हुआ ये कि वो अपने 7 साला बच्चे के लिए लाए, लेकिन खुद ही इतने इंस्पायर्ड हो गए कि वो बच्चे को खेलने ही नहीं दिया कभी. तो हमारा भी हाल कुछ ऐसा ही कि लैपटॉप है, यानी मोबाइल फोन है, स्मार्टफोन है, लेकिन हम खुद उसमें इतने इन्वॉल्व हैं कि हमने कुछ उसकी जाजुबियत से हटके ही नहीं दे रहे. सो दिस थिंग नीड्स टू बी ब्रॉट इन. बहुत खूब, बहुत खूब.
Yes,
अक्षय
sir.
जी अपना वो अपना ईमेल या को तारुफ दीजिएगा. आई एम वेरी हैप्पी दैट यू आर एबल टू जॉइन अस, एंड थैंक्स. And mashallah, baki to the usual suspects were all here. Abida sir, thank you. Hafsa
Abbas,
Shahriar.
I just need to add one thing and more from this, all this that COVID has brought up. We need to teach our students and our children the importance of how to live without technology. This is, I think, that is very important. How to live necessity in, matlab, it's in the life skills. What are important things that if they don't have electricity and things like that, our world is, mashallah, is very good, and Allah Ta'ala has bestowed on us so many things that if we know how to utilize those things, we can live without technology. So we should teach that to our students and kids also.
ये YouTube पे पूरी टॉक सुनिएगा, क्योंकि शुरू के हिस्से में डॉक्टर साहब ने ये बात की हुई है इसके बारे में, बड़ी दिलचस्प. You
Wow.
will enjoy his answer to this very issue and you will like it. ठीक. अच्छा जी, खुदा
Hello,
हाफिज
Hafsa.
people. Hafsa जी,
Okay.
खुदा हाफिज. Thank you.
Allah Hafiz, sir. Goodbye.
Allah hafiz. Allah hafiz.
Waiting for other sessions, sir. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. All the best.
All the best.
All right. Allah Hafiz.